The Week Armchair Kickoff is rebranding and expanding. We are now the weekly Armchair Sports Talk. It's going to be your home for sports content for the fans and by the fans. More sports, more guests and more talk, covering all aspects of football, WWE, basketball, MMA and much, much more. That's the weekly Armchair Sports Talk, coming soon.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Weekly Armchair Sports Talk podcast. This is our United show. This is Devil's Advocate, as always. And today I'm joined by a very special guest on the podcast here today. We've had him on before, but this is our first kind of one-to-one. Well, Reese will be joining us midway through the podcast as well. But it's my first one-to-one podcast with Mr. Jimmy Williams from Red Devil Talk. Jimmy, how's it going today? How are you?
All good, Keane. How are you?
Not too bad, no, not too bad. You know, we're kind of in Ireland, we're slowly but surely kind of coming back to normal. So, look, I think for all of us, we're just kind of hoping for the best, really, and kind of get one step closer to being able to go to Old Trafford as well.
Yeah, I got a haircut recently and I went for a few pints. It's great. The simple things.
Simple things in life. Absolutely. Do you know what I think? I haven't went out yet because I'm keeping them. It's my birthday in like 3 weeks. So I'm keeping myself kind of for that day, so I can go absolutely mad for a couple of days then. So I'm going to keep myself for the birthday in a couple of weeks. Jimmy, before we've had you on before, and we've talked all things United. We've talked games, we've talked about transfer windows, we talked about that stuff. Now that's obviously very prevalent in the news and stuff like that. We're going to talk about all that kind of later on the show. First of all, I'd like to talk to you about yourself more than anything else. First, obviously you have your own podcast, Red Devil Talk. So you interview former United players, you interview other sports stars. You kind of also talk about you could really concentrate on like high performance, kind of, and the psychology side of the game as well. Talk to us kind of about how you started Red Devil Talk and what gave you the idea to do it.
Being honest, it happened by accident, and I'll explain better what I mean by that in a minute. But I would have always, I suppose, been good at writing in school, creative writing. So originally I would have wrote a few blogs for some sites like Red Mancunian, who were very big a couple of years ago, and I was doing that for a while. But it didn't really do anything for me. I wanted to kind of go on my own and kind of make it my own if I could. And I'm also studying sports psychology in college. So it was actually a girlfriend at the time who said, why don't you blend the two of them together when you're interviewing these United players? Why don't you ask them about the mental side of sport, how they deal with things like being injured, being dropped, how they mentally prepare for a big game in their season? And I thought that was a brilliant idea. So I started doing that, and I got in touch with Barney Chilton. I don't know if your listeners will be familiar with Barney Chilton. Barney Chilton is the editor of Red News. I would encourage every United fan to subscribe to Red News. He is just a gentleman. He does great things for United fans. And I asked him, was he looking for any new writers? At this point, I still hadn't done a podcast. It was all I was just transcribing the phone calls and they were going to print. And Barney said, send me some work. So I sent him an interview with Brian McClare. Yeah. And he liked it. And he said, yeah, let's do it. And I've been doing that for nearly 3 years now. And then it was my dad who said, would you not ever consider using the recorded audio of doing a podcast? Which I thought was a crazy idea, to be honest. I was like, I hate my voice. I'm going to sound like a twat, which I think is probably a normal concern for everyone who does it.
I can second that. Massively.
But I did it, and then yeah, it's something I can't really explain. If anyone is not familiar with the podcasts, the big question on the podcast every week at the end is, in your opinion, what are some factors that are crucial in achieving high performance? And I get a load of different answers, and I'd have my own views on what it takes to achieve high performance. And recently it's been charted beside Sky Sports, and this week it was in the top 100 pods in Ireland, which was I never had a go. I never thought I would do that. So that's how it happened, largely by accident.
It's mad because you think about, like, I know you a good while, and I know, like, you're big Manchester United fan, and to kind of have that passion for the football club. Also, then, like, you're studying sports psychology, you're doing all that, and for all that to kind of come together, and then actually have that as a passion in your life, but also you're doing it as a degree. I think when you kind of when you look at that and you kind of analyze that, it kind of shows. And I've said this to a couple of people before who've been on here. If you do something you love, you never work a day in your life, and I think that's another example of it.
I put a lot of it down to luck, because on another day, I'm emailing people like who've played for United, they've won Premier Leagues, they've won Champions Leagues, I'm emailing world champions. On another day, they read these emails, Keane, and they don't even bother replying to me. So no matter how good you are at something, whether it's sport, business, you need that little bit of luck as well, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. I think that plays a massive factor in anything you do in life, or anything in that manner. But like, when you look at kind of yourself, you've interviewed numerous people. You've interviewed Luke Chadwick, you've interviewed Brian McClare, so you've interviewed Ken Doherty, you've interviewed all these different people connected to the club, but also like different areas. Ken Doherty's obviously a snooker player, fan of the club, but obviously you interviewed him, for your sports podcast as well. What would be your favorite ever? If you had a favorite interview, whether it's on the podcast or whether it's even one of your phone calls, right? Do you have any particular favorite interview, or kind of one that stands out in terms of the conversations you've had?
I've been blessed. I had a list of people who I would love to do when I started off, and it was Ken Doherty, Gary Neville, Kevin Moran, Martin Buchan, and Paul McGrath. And I've been so lucky. I've done them all except Paul McGrath. So if you're listening, Paul, let's sort that out. But no, seriously, I'd have to say Gary Neville. I mean, I emailed his agent, and she said, yeah, he'll do it. I got his phone number, and then to see my phone, Gary Neville is calling. It's mental. It's mental. I just think I'm lucky. I do feel lucky that I get to do it. And it was around the time when Jose Mourinho, the wheels are starting to come off for Jose at the time, and me and Gary actually had done the interview. And one of the questions I put to Gary was, do you think Jose is starting to lose the dressing room? And he said, absolutely not. And about 2 weeks later, I can't remember who it was. I think it was West Ham, and they were shocking.
Let's not go there. I think I know what game you're talking about. Let's not go there.
They weren't doing the basics. They weren't even running. They weren't tracking back. And
Is that the game McTominay played at centre back?
I think it was.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, away. Yeah, it was away. Yeah, I remember that game, yeah.
And he emailed me the Monday to do another interview because he wanted to rectify his comments. Oh, so wow. I'd have to say Gary Neville would be my favourite, but Martin Buchan as well. Obviously, I'm not young enough to have grown up watching people like Martin Buchan, but what they did for the club is not lost on me. At the same time, he was arguably United's most important player for a decade. So to speak to people like that is fantastic. And Kevin Moran as well, as an Irish dad. And Ken is always great crack. It's hard to pick one.
Kevin was a great coup. I'd say you'd love that interview because obviously the GAA background as well. Like,
yeah, I mean, I'm FaceTiming people like Kevin Moran. It's mental. Like, really, it is mental.
100%. Talk to me a bit about you're kind of speaking about interviewing like Kevin Moran, like Gary Neville and stuff like that. Was there ever a point, like when you first started out and you're doing these interviews, was there ever a point you thought, like, I'd love to do this full time? Like, obviously you're doing the psychology and you're doing the podcast and stuff like that. Ever a point come to you like, I'd love to do this full time, love to do this as a career?
I mean, I've thought about it. My main passion is obviously performance psychology. Maybe we'll talk about that in a minute. I don't know. So that's probably going to be my career, but I can see myself going down the freelance route. I'm thinking about doing maybe a master's in journalism when I'm finished with the psychology. I wouldn't say I'm finished with education just yet. So I can see psychology being my main career, where I work with teams to kind of facilitate high performance, but maybe a freelance podcaster and journalist as well. But it never really dawned on me. It was just a passion and a hobby that's become something that I never really could have predicted.
It's mad. Like, when you think about, like, things like this, podcasting, reporting, stuff like that, like, I've known from my experience here, and you know from when I first started. I started this for the crack. I literally started this for the crack during lockdown because I was bored off my head, and I love talking about football. And look, I'm doing this every week, and now like I'm on Talk the Devils now with a former United player coming soon, and that's starting next week. I my mind is boggled, like, in terms of something you start for a laugh or something that happens by accident can actually kind of evolve into something you do as a passion that you do in life. So I think you're absolutely right when you say like things happen like by accident. Sometimes they can happen for a reason as well.
I mean, one reason why I started it was for when I become qualified as a sports performance psychologist, which I'm not yet. Hopefully I'll get there. I'll have a network of people that I can message if I ever need a placement at a team. That was honestly the plan. And I've been lucky to do that. So that was the main goal. Kind of create a network of people that might give me 2 weeks shadowing the performance psychologist at a team if I need it.
Reece, I understand you have a couple of questions as well.
Yeah, obviously, I'm intrigued about sports psychology aspects. So in terms of the route itself, is there a particular area within sports psychology that you want to be more understandable in terms of like expanding your own knowledge? Is there, because obviously there's so many different dimensions to sports psychology as well. Like there's the player's mental aspect, there's the effect on the physical sense as well. So is there any particular area that you think that's the area I want to be more central in, or is it just a wide range?
I'm fascinated by the psychology of injury.
Okay.
There's a concept in psychology known as athletic identity. Long story short, I won't bore you.
I find psychology fascinating, so by all means, you wouldn't bore me. I only did psychology for a year, and I got an A in my final exam, so
that's good going. So athletic identity is this idea that a high-performing athlete will basically sacrifice their life away from sport, and their identity will basically be that of just an athlete. And then the problem is, if they become injured, all of a sudden there's this sense of, I'm not playing sport now. Well, who am I? If they retire, I've spoke to players that they've told me that the club makes their doctor's appointments for them. They've told me the club it books their plane tickets, and then when they retire, they haven't a clue what to do. And there's this thing of, well, who am I now? So I think that's a dangerous thing. I read a statistic recently. Out of 1.5 million kids who go through academies, I think the number of them that go to play pro ball was less than 10%, which is a worrying statistic. I mean, if you're putting all your eggs in one basket to be a sports player and you're not kind of exploring other aspects of who you are, if that's taken away from you, you're in trouble.
It is alarming. I get where you come from, because you look at so many academies now. They physically, and they also request that you go out and get other degrees. You see a lot of footballers who have like psychology degrees. They have business degrees because, yes, they're obviously the dream of many, like myself and Keane, like ourselves. We can all say we all played football as a kid. You could ask any one of us if we didn't get to do the jobs that we wanted to do. You bet your life on it. I would love to play football one day, even at like, not even just as a pro level, but even like semi-pro. You're still making it as a footballer. You're still going to do something, but to have no backup plan really does kill you. And I like what you mentioned there. You spoke about the loss of identity, because when you mentioned that, it gave me one example from a manager perspective. Bill Shankly, obviously, as a Liverpool manager, when he retired, obviously out of the blue, he still went to training because he didn't have anything else to do, and he was reported he was at Goodison Park playing like cricket matches and table tennis with the Everton manager at the time. So when you spoke about like identity, could it still relate to the more senior perspective as like a manager role, or is it more of just because it is actually such an intriguing question. Also, there's so many answers, and you can't pinpoint specifically. So I kind of like, and obviously you said less than 10% at 1.5 million. That is frightening as well. And how could they honestly improve that? I know it's quite a bizarre question to ask, but how could you improve on that 10%?
I don't know how you can improve on the 10%. I think ultimately not everyone is good enough to be a professional footballer.
Yeah.
I do think practice can be improved for when they are released from academies. You mentioned there this backup plan, a big thing in rugby now. A lot of the Irish rugby players are doing masters now. They're doing the same course as me and you. Well, so when they retire from rugby, they have something to do. I think to improve support the well-being, if I can call it that, of young players who are being released from academies, I do think there has to be an element of formal training provided.
Yeah.
I mean, but that has to start from the top. So in order for the players to be equipped with the knowledge of the dangers of not exploring other aspects of who they are away from sport, in order for the players to have those skill set, the coaches first have to have that skill set. So the coach has to be educated too. So
Do you
I think
think that many coaches have that skill set? Do you think any of them actually do?
I don't, and I think there's a lot of research that would suggest that managers don't actually possess the skill set to support players in that way. And I think that's something that needs to be looked at, needs to be addressed, because they are probably the number one peer in their life outside of school in terms of organized activities. Sport is the main thing they're doing. So apart from teachers and parents, the coach is a big person in their life. So I think formal training for coaches is a must.
Yeah, I agree on that. I agree on that.
But then it's tough because you have to factor in things like budget and money and all the little things that have to be done to get a coaching education program like that off the ground. It's not straightforward. So it's easy for me to sit here and say, well, the FA or the FAI or whoever need to do this, but it's not straightforward.
Yeah, but look, I think that with things like that, I think a lot of planning needs to be put into place, and there needs to be kind of a board kind of for that, and there needs to be a vision. It's not something that can be done overnight. Like, look, we all know that. It's not something that can be done overnight, but definitely, if these football associations had an outline plan, they could definitely help and look at benefit from grassroots level all the way up. Do you know what I mean? I think that's if there's a plan put into place, then look, I think all levels can benefit from it, and the development of players can be pushed forward that bit more. And then again, like I think at international level as well, you'll see, especially let's say, Jimmy, from an Ireland point of view, if there's kind of more things put into place, maybe we'd perform better kind of at stages. I think that definitely could be something that could materialize. Obviously, yeah.
If you think of it, these players, they're going to digs at what age? 12, 13. They're sacrificing their friends, probably, drink, women, all these things that we've experienced growing up. Women, drink, going out, having a crack with your friends. These players are probably sacrificing that because ultimately their objective is to give a good performance on a Saturday, and everything they do, be it their sleep, their diet, everything they do is geared towards that performance, and everything they do is geared towards sport.
Yeah, that's the thing. And you said it there, like players go into digs at 12, 13, let's say through their teenage years, they're making life sacrifice at that age where your teenage years is strictly football, eat, sleep, train. Like that, eat, sleep, train, play a match. That's literally their life, and probably education on the side of it as well. Like, they probably have to go, they're probably private tutors. If they're in digs, they're probably not going to public school. Let's face it, they're probably not. So they're probably getting private tutored every day outside of that. So like they've a lack of social life in that time frame as well. So yeah, look, it's definitely something where I think there could be improvements made in the system. And if things don't work out, there has to be kind of an after program after that for them. If there isn't, there has to be something in place for these like players to thrive in life. Never mind the game, because the game is the game. There's always different levels, and every player has their level. I think we can fully establish that, the three of us, that every player has their ceiling at professional level, or whether it's a semi-pro or amateur or Sunday league, whatever it may be. Every player has a ceiling. Every player has their level. But that,
definitely,
I think when you drop down from professional level to the further levels, there has to be something in place to kind of deal with that kind of consequence.
You hit the nail on the head there. You said for life. It's about providing transferable skills to young people that if sport is taken away from them, that they can use these skills in other aspects of life.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. Jimmy, obviously, I know you a long time, and I know that you're an avid Man United supporter. I'd like to talk to you a bit about kind of present Man United at the moment, and then we move on to kind of your favourite memories and stuff like that of supporting the football club. Last 2 years, in my opinion, we've made significant progress under Solskjaer in terms of what he picked up. We touched on briefly Jose Mourinho and kind of how the wheels kind of fell off his tenure as Man United manager. You kind of look at Ollie. He came in, he steadied ship. He had a tremendous 3 months, and he kind of came into a team that was very disjointed, and the harmony in the dressing room wasn't any. He's come in now his first 2 full seasons. He's finished third and second. When you consider them couple of seasons, he didn't get significant backing in terms of first team players. Part of the exception of Maguire and Wan-Bissaka and Bruno. Can you really say the rest of the signings were his first choice targets for first team? Probably not. In your opinion, when you look at the kind of 2.5 3 years now of Solskjaer's reign, what would be your overall assessment? Because for me, I think it's progress year by year. Obviously, there's probably momentary things we can improve on. Every team can improve in some aspects of their performance, but what would be your overall assessment so far?
It's such a tough question, isn't it? I mean, you would have to say it's improvement. I think, is Solskjaer the man to bring the Premier League back to Old Trafford? I don't know. I don't have the answers to that. None of us do. My heart says he is.
Yeah.
My head says he probably isn't. What I do know is that he deserves a huge amount of credit for the way he has turned things around at the club. Because when Jose Mourinho left the club, it was a mess.
Yeah.
We had Pogba wanted to leave, Martial wanted to leave, Luke Shaw wanted to leave. He was just divisive. They weren't doing the basics, as you mentioned. They were down in tools. They were going behind in games, and they were finished. At least now, if they go behind, they might lose, but they will lose having a goal, Keane. So
yeah,
I love what Solskjaer has instilled into the club. He has instilled an attitude in them again. They will leave everything on the pitch. They won't go down without a fight. I agree with you. I don't think all the signings were his first choice signings. I still think we're short in a few areas. I'm excited by the Jadon Sancho signing, but let's not be fooled. But let's not be fooled either. There are still other areas we badly need to invest in. The problem we have, in my view, is that Man City are the finished article now.
Yeah.
And United are probably 18 months to 2 years behind him in terms of development, I think. So in order for United to catch up with City have to stand still and buy no one this summer. So United have to accelerate their own recruitment process this summer to get near them. I don't think we're going to get all the players that we need in one window. But that's the problem we are faced with, because City are the finished article. United aren't.
And when you look at, let's say, this summer transfer window, obviously, we brought in Jadon Sancho. Looks like Rafael Varane talks are kind of progressing. That's an avenue I think, look, it's a signing for me. I think it'll almost have like a Virgil van Dijk effect at the back for us. Because I think Harry Maguire is exceptional. He's turned into kind of an exceptional defender. He's kind of earned his kind of badges in the last, let's say, 6 months. I think that like the second half of last season, I thought he was very consistent. I thought his performances really, kind of stepped up to a different level. He really stepped up as a leader and a captain, in my view. You kind of see it during the games. What I loved about, whereas I hated not being able to go to the games during this pandemic, but one thing I did notice, you see a lot more and you hear a lot more during the games. You notice things you wouldn't notice if there was a full 76,000 in Old Trafford. He's very vocal. He's a leader. One thing I think that hindered him during his time is maybe Victor Lindelof being a bit vulnerable at times, especially set pieces, crosses, stuff like that. Whereas I think if you bring in Raphael Varane, you have a defender in there who's a serial winner, has won things at club and international level. He's good in the ball. He's quick. Like, I think Harry Maguire, I think he has him beside him. I think that's a very solid partnership. And all of a sudden, you've Luke Shaw, in my opinion, at the moment, is probably the best left back in England. Well, definitely is the best left back in England at the moment. And if not Europe, I would go as far as saying, when you look at a 12-month time span, I don't think there's a left back in Europe at the moment that's kind of been as consistent as Shaw. You can maybe argue Alphonso Davies at Bayern Munich. I think he's an exceptional player, very young, very high ceiling. But I think, you bring Varane into this defence. I think for me, it takes us that next level. But I think you hit the nail on the head. There's still other areas. I think defensive midfield probably is every Man United fan across the world talks about that position. Like that. I think that's, for Man United fans, that's probably the holy grail in terms of maximising their attacking potential in terms of the forward players we have. But I think for me, Varane would be that next level sign that could take us, to a newer next level and be even stronger next year.
I agree. I think the funny thing with Maguire, I think it's interesting how sport is perceived and how people's views change. Maguire became a better player in the eyes of United fans when he wasn't playing. For most of the season, I know Twitter is a cesspit of negativity anyway, but they were saying he's not an 85 million player, he's not this, he's not that. I think Maguire is exceptional, personally. I think he can get United up the field. He can pick a pass, long, short. He can whip it into your feet. I think it was 17 passes into the England's final third the other night.
Yeah.
I think he's exceptional. The problem, as I see it, and you mentioned at a good point there, Lindelof and Maguire together are not dominant. I think they played 51 games together last season, and they conceded on average a goal a game. That is not going to win you a Premier League title. If you look at any of the great partnerships, Vidic and Ferdinand, who else? Carvalho, Terry,
Pallister, Bruce,
Company,
Stan Johnson.
These people aren't conceding a goal a game. Yeah. That's not going to win you a league title. Yeah. Tuanzebe hasn't developed as we've hoped. Eric Bailly is often injured. He's erratic. I actually think he was Maguire's best partner.
Yeah, I think
for a period.
When you look at that time with Bailly, actually, from the time we went, like Christmas to the time we went top the league, and Bailly was in beside Maguire, I think they complement each other really well.
He allows United to play higher up the field because he has the pace that maybe Lindelof doesn't. Because when you're dropping off, you're inviting pressure on. That's half the problem, I think, sometimes. We don't have the recovery pace at the back sometimes. I'm not a tactical expert. That's just a view. Phil Jones, injured, hasn't happened for him. So United need a dominant centre-back. And I think Rafa Varane would bring that. They tried to sign him in 2011. They were close. Madrid came in. Hopefully, they get it done this time. I think he's one of the best centre-backs in the world at the minute. I mean, he's strong in the air. He's quick. I think he could take United to the next level, but I'm not going to get my hopes up just yet, Keane. I won't believe it's happened until it's happened.
Yeah, until I see here we go.
Or until Fabrizio says it.
Yeah, I think for me, until like Fabrizio Romano says, here we go soon, or here we go, then I'll be like, right, what number is he going to be? And, thinking about tactical setups next season, that literally be me. I think we just momentarily lost Reese. This is not like him to have a technical difficulty. Hopefully we get him back soon. I'm just going to ask you Reese's question just while he's buffering on our screen. Bruno Fernandes, we talk about high performance and we talk about players taking to the next level. When we signed him in January 2019, I think he's someone who's been, I suppose, a catalyst of Solskjaer's reign. I think, what would you overall kind of assess his kind of time at Man United and kind of the overall impact he's had?
His impact at United is, I can't think of any player in modern times that has made such an impact. Obviously, we had Cantona. Don't kill me if any of your listeners are from the 90s, but the 90s isn't modern. So I think the older fans listening will say Cantona, and they're right. But in modern times, I don't think anyone's had an impact like Bruno Fernandes. Imagine where United would be without him.
Yeah.
I don't think they would have gotten near the top four, personally. I think he got tired towards the end of last season. I don't think his performances were what they could have been. But unfortunately, Solskjaer is in a position where he can't really drop him because Pogba's had a great Euros. I think he had a brilliant second half this season. He doesn't do it every week though, does he? So Bruno is undroppable. Van de Beek hasn't done it. I think he deserves another year. But Bruno has been exceptional, and I think he is crucial to any success United will have in the future. I read somewhere that they're looking to get a new contract for him.
Yeah.
They need to get that done. Yeah,
I think with Bruno, I think you have to kind of give him that new contract. I think for me personally as well, he's been like, I always tweet about him, I always talk about him. He's a player for me, like, who I feel since Cristiano left the club, I kind of feel attached to. In terms of a player who we can look to win us a game, who can do something in the game to really kind of get you off your seat. Now, I think Bruno, like, he's only played in Old Trafford, I believe, could be wrong here, people in my comment section might correct me here. I believe it's only about 4 or 5 games he's played at Old Trafford with fans. Maybe 6 actually, because the Watford game as well, just gone. But I believe it's only about 5 or 6 games that he's played actually in front of fans. Like, imagine, I'm just going to paint this picture, Jimmy. Imagine the roar he's going to get when we're all back in August, 76,000, and his name is read out.
Yeah.
And the announcement, I think he's going to get a massive roar.
And I think that was a big part in Cavani staying because he wanted to leave. That's no secret. I think Solskjaer sold him that image of scoring goals in front of 76,000 fans. And just for the record, I'm only joking about the 90s before anyone kills me.
Absolutely, because we do know people like to clip stuff up sometimes. So, look, he was joking, and that we're going to lay that disclaimer out there right now. Reece is on the way back, guys, so he will be on the show and he will have some questions for Jimmy with relation to Manchester United as well. Just kind of touching on United of past. Obviously, we've had, in your time supporting United, we've had Sir Alex, we've won trophies. We've had big wins, big losses. We've had dramatic games. What is the first ever United game that you can remember watching?
Arsenal United, April 2001. Sylvain Wiltord scored and Arsenal won the league. And I was obsessed from that moment. I can't remember the team. I think Phil Neville was playing. Scholes was playing. But yeah, it was April 2001. I remember my father brought me out to the pub and he was having a few pints and I was like a dog after it. I was so upset. And I was obsessed ever since then. I'm still obsessed. They dictate my mood. If they lose, don't come near me. If they win, I'm delighted, which is weird because I'm nearly 30 and football dictates my mood, but I don't see it.
I'm the same. I'm 25 in 3 weeks' time, and I can tell you one thing: football dictates my mood and everything. Like any sport I follow, like especially if you think football being my number one, but then after that, like if I follow MMA a lot. If one of my favorite MMA fighters loses, one of them's fighting this weekend. But if one of my favorite MMA fighters loses, I'm like an absolute dog. I really am. Like, I'm so passionate about sport, and I get really attached to a team. Look, I think when Ireland lose, Jimmy, I think these days the blow isn't as deep because we're going through our own transitional period at the minute. Reece, I understand you have a few questions for Jimmy in regards to Man United. Now, I did ask him about Bruno. I know he wants to ask him about Bruno, but do you have any other questions for Jimmy with regards to Manchester United?
Fun enough, actually, I did have a few questions. Actually, cheers for asking the Bruno ones. Just for a heads up, it was my Wi-Fi kicked me off. I think it just hates me today. Don't know. But back on the grounds of United, in terms of this current team, and we all know the obvious ones. Obviously, you've got Maguire, you've got Bruno Fernandes, you've got Cavani, Rashford, Greenwood. Like, these are all the obvious ones. Pogba as well, in terms of like players that get your eyes up and you want to keep focused on. But then you look at the team in general. Is there any players in you think go under the radar that actually deserve more attention? I asked Keane this question about a podcast a week ago, but obviously from your perspective, Jimmy, players that actually go under the radar that frankly shouldn't be, they deserve a little bit more respect, a little bit more notion from fans. Is there any that you could possibly highlight and you think, you know what, they do deserve more respect?
It's a great question. It's a tough question. I think McTominay, it deserves more credit than he gets, possibly. He doesn't do the fancy work or the fancy tricks that, Pogba or Bruno will do, and he won't do the flicks that Martial does, but he does the dirty work. He does the dirty work, he does the simple work, and he does it well. Unfortunately, a lot of people won't agree with this, but hey, that's part of the crack, isn't it?
Yeah.
United aren't winning any leagues with McTominay and Fred midfield. But I do think McTominay is massively underrated.
I think that Europa League final, that performance, I think a lot of McTominay, let's say people who don't necessarily have an affection for him, I think he probably won over a lot of people in that Europa League final, especially because I think in a game where I think we, in my opinion, again, I'm not casting a negative outlook on this, but I think we played the occasion, not the actual game. I think that day, I think any other day, I think we beat Villarreal. I strongly do believe that. I think we played the occasion, not the game. I think it might have got to us. And of course, Villarreal were massively, though defensively organised. Emery did have them well organised on the day. But I think that Europa League final did kind of win over a lot of Man United fans. For McTominay, I think he was the best player in the pitch that day from both teams. He was outstanding. And he was going forward. He was winning the ball. He was making clearances. He was trying to drive the team forward. And there was many times in that game where I thought like he could actually be the match winner because how well he was playing. It was kind of written in the stars. Obviously, being a part of the academy as well. I have great affection for the Manchester United academy. I always love to see one of our own come through and do well. Hence why starting an academy podcast coming soon in 2 weeks' time. Just thought I'd get a little plug in there. But look, for me, I think Scott McTominay does fly under the radar. Yes, I think he can improve in certain areas. I think sometimes maybe decision making sometimes can improve. But again, like he's evolving every season. Like this season's been his best. I believe he scored 7-8 goals this season. His best goal scoring season. When you consider he's not a holding midfield player, he's a box-to-box midfield player. And largely this season he's playing in a holding midfield position. So to get that output from not playing in your natural position, I think deserves credit. I think he's in there to kind of help babysit Lindelof, if I be honest, in terms of provide that cover from physical outlets. Yeah. But look, I think he's a player who I think will get kind of the exception from United fans because he's one of our own and he always puts in 100%. And I think real Man United fans will see that and not these people who look for clicks, but I'm not going to go there. Yeah. But look,
I think even though I do feel McTominay is underrated, possibly a slight contradiction, I still don't think United will win the league with Fred and McTominay together in midfield. Together, I don't think they're good enough.
Oh, of course. I agree. I agree with that statement, but I think you need squad players. You need players who come in and do a shift in certain games. Yeah. McTominay is one of them. Like I spoke about this. I spoke about this last week in terms of even another player in our squad. I was talking about Daniel James last week, and I said, look, is he ever going to be a Manchester United starter? No. Straight out I said, no, probably not. But a player like Daniel James has a role in their squad for certain games against certain setups where he can exploit people with his pace, and help us on the counter attack against certain teams. Like, not every player you're going to have in your squad, and Alex Ferguson done this well. You get certain characters and you get certain players in your squad to facilitate certain games, certain moments in the season. Like, apart from the exception of Liverpool winning the league last year, and they had 2 years ago now actually, and they had 14 squad players really, and no one else was used. Look at every other successful title winning team, bar the exception of Liverpool and Leicester City. You utilize a squad of at least 20 to 22 players. I don't care what anybody says. Look back when United and Chelsea won the league. Look back when Arsenal won the leagues. You have certain players in certain situations. Is McTominay a player that's going to start every week? No, absolutely not. But he's a player who can come in against the Chelsea, man mark a player. He can come in against maybe a West Brom away from home and drop into them little spaces where they're going to be hitting us direct with a long ball. He is useful in certain games. But again, I do agree with McTominay and Fred as your starting midfield too. You're probably not going to win a Premier League. Realistically, you look at the quality of the teams around us, they'll have a stronger midfield over a course of a season. But you look at players like the McTominays of the world, they are players you need in your squad to win a league. Darren Fletcher wasn't a starter every week, and by no means, people, I need to point this out, I'm not comparing McTominay to Darren Fletcher, but I'm using him as an example. He was a player who, he didn't start 30 games a season. He might play 20 or 30 games in the league, but he had a role, and he knew his role. And when he played, he did drop a 7 out of 10 most times, 7, 8 out of 10 most times. He'd done his job. Ji-Sung Park, another player, didn't play every game this season, but you knew when he came to the team, he'd run his socks off and he'd do something for the team. You need players like that in the team. It's not all about flair. Like, fair enough, you need quality to win games, but you need determination, you need heart as well, and you need that in abundance to win a league. So I'm agreeing. McTominay isn't a player that's probably going to be that match winner, but he's going to be a player that's going to be important over a course of a season to be that player who you can go to in certain moments of games. I think that's very important to know.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree with all of that, to be honest. Actually, going on the back of the academy stuff, actually, because that's actually brought up a question I was actually going to ask next. Because you look at the academy teams, but I'm not going to talk about promising academy players. I'm actually going to, maybe a bit controversial, maybe flip an argument. We'll see what happens here. But you look at the academy players we've actually had since 2010, and obviously there was a whole fiasco 2014 where it completely fell apart. Everybody knows, like, the whole Ricky Braga business. That was absolute, to quote nicely, bullshit, and it went horribly wrong. From that period of time, was there any particular youth academy players you actually thought, you know what, could have done more in this team, like, in terms of actually fulfilling their potential? Obviously, there's the obvious ones we can all mention, like Ravel Morrison, that ended poorly, Angel Gomez. But see the ones that aren't maybe as prominent to United fans like ourselves, but are still, like, you know what I mean, like, that know much about the youth academy itself. Do you think there's any out there that could have done a little bit more? Because that's a conversation that doesn't get sparked about often. It's always the ones that are just known to people straight away.
I mean, ultimately, I don't mean to give a short answer, probably not, because if they were good enough, they probably would have made it. But
yeah,
I had high hopes for Borthwick Jackson. I think Van Gaal gave him his debut.
Yeah.
Mitchell. I thought Mitchell might do more. But no, ultimately, I think if they were good enough, they probably would have made it at United, or they would have went on loan somewhere and came back. So probably they're at the level they should be.
Do you know what? Borthwick Jackson sold me dreams when Van Gaal gave him his debut. Because the couple of times you get beyond the player and put a good cross into the box, I was thinking, Christ, we have a good fullback here on our hands. Do you know, I thought, I was sold dreams after a couple of games he played. I was thinking, I know we're after buying Luke Shaw, but we could have a player to challenge him. Yeah, Borthwick Jackson is a good show. To kind of even turn that on its head for myself, I think one player for me, I think he was a flash in the pan probably for us, when James Wilson was given his debut by Giggsy,
Yeah.
that's one who I thought he actually might amount to something. Like he scored and like he got a few games on the Van Galen, done a job in a couple of games. He's another one who I thought, I know you talked about ones who flew under the kind of the, not so much the radar, but ones who probably could have amounted a bit more. I know Wilson, when he went on loan, he's a bit unlucky with a few injuries or whatever, but I think when you look back at kind of academy players, I think he's maybe someone who maybe could have done a bit more, do you know, in terms of his quality.
I'm interested to hear,
Absolutely.
Reese, your view on that one.
There was actually one other player that was sparked to mind, and funnily enough, he was given a little bit of a runtime by Van Gaal, but didn't live up to his potential. He wasn't a youth player, but he was brought into the youth player similar to Hannibal. Guillermo Varela.
Yeah.
He was another one that sort of stands to mind because obviously as a young right wing back at the time, because we were playing like that back five system, which was ridiculous. Then we switched to the back four. But you look at him as a young talent. He was 19, 20 years old when we humiliated Arsenal. I thought you were going to win the league. Did you bugger? We humiliated them. We humiliated them 3-2. But you look at he played that right back system that day, and such young talent in that squad. But I thought he would have kicked on because he had a decent game a couple of days prior as well. Obviously, we all remember the Midtjylland game, 5-1. We won that day as well. It sparks ground. But he was another that I thought gave me false hope. And I was like, as a young right back, you would have thought, obviously he's not going to be the next Gary Neville. So that seems to be the everyday thing for a right back is, you're here to be the next Gary Neville. No, you should be here to exactly. You should be here to stick to your own level. But I feel he was given the responsibility too early, and it got him a lot. And he's one player that stands out for me as one that failed. Another one's Will Keane, similar to James Wilson, as a young striker. Did not live up to his talent. Now what he's playing in League Two, I haven't got a bloody clue where he is now. He's fallen that far off the radar that I've forgotten where he is. I can just remember him playing one game and I haven't seen him since.
Yeah, he was unlucky with injuries. Well, I won't be hard on him at all. I think he was on
he was for that, but just in terms of when he did play, he just did not.
Yeah, I think it's kind of it'd be harsh to kind of say that he didn't amount to. I think injuries played. We spoke about injuries on this podcast earlier on. I think injuries still played a big part in that. You look at, he was meant to play that game, Marcus Rashford. Ultimately started and
absolutely
went on to have the career he has now. Things happen for a reason. Jimmy talked about earlier on the podcast. Luck.
True.
He was unlucky there.
I wish he played because he was good in the academy. He was just, like you said, the injuries. And obviously there were games where he could have stepped. Even now, for his professional level, he's not been able to prosper, and that's right. You spoke about injuries, and that's a good factor. But then you look at the team as well that we've had recently, young players. The one that seems to come to mind is Tahith Chong, and I'm like, this is a young guy that I like, and also I like Angel Gomez, but there's factors that they failed at Man United, which Frank, you could potentially say greed and attitude. But Tahith Chong, he actually has a little bit of talent behind him. He just doesn't seem to have the physical presence. I don't think he was ever actually told to go and actually put something on him, to go and develop as a physical player. As a winger, you need a little bit strength behind him, a physical presence. I don't think he's ever been given the understanding to do it. I don't think he's ever been told. I think he's been told I think you're good dribbling the ball, do that. And it seems to have backfired on him.
Yeah, I think, Chong, he had a loan spell in Germany last year. Had a bright start to his loan spell. Look, it'd be interesting to see he's back now this summer. A lot of the kind of players in the academy are in first team training. Interested to see this pre-season with Hannibal, Shortiri. Joe Hugel now also getting a call up this pre-season. Obviously, James Garner back from a very good loan spell at Nottingham Forest as well. Maybe could he be the answer to the defensive midfield problem? Probably too early to say, but it'd be interesting to see how Ollie assesses these very good crop of youth players we have and kind of how they're used. Because I always harp on last season, I was always hoping for that Hannibal call up, and we seen him when he came on against Wolves.
Yeah,
he has. You can see there's talent there. There is raw talent there. Just how we nurture it now and kind of help that development. Because I know Galatasaray were looking at him on a loan deal. That could go either one or two ways because you're going there. That's it's a big club where they are. Though could have happened too soon. I don't know, but he's a player who I highly rate. Obviously, anyone who watches or listens to this podcast knows shoulder short hero for me. He's a one kid as well who I think could amount to something as well. Maybe we both mentioned like physical presence. Maybe physically he can maybe beef up a bit more, but I think he has talent as well in abundance.
We
so
saw
he's
that
definitely out there.
Yeah, I agree, because you look at the players we've got coming through, and that is a statement point. Is you can have the technical talent, but you like in the Premier League, you can have technical talent, but you still need to have a little bit of a physical presence. I know people are saying, "Oh, contradicting," because there's players that have been in the league like Mata and David Silva who are technically brilliant, but they could still at least take a challenge. Like my worry about Shorter, he's still 16, 17 years old, and one bad challenge on him could cause him so much, and that fear. But he's such a good player as well that I'm looking forward to. But then you look at the opposite wing, and obviously it's been massively reported by Anthony Alanga. He has worked hard with he went to Macclesfield.
You see the pictures of him, lads, on Twitter. I seen him there last week.
I saw it. Yeah,
he
went
like
to Macclesfield to train. I absolutely commend him. Like the fact that he's an absolute specimen. Like Adama Traore, sit down. Like you're not the physical presence. Like sit down, boy. It's Alanga. I look at the fact that he obviously done really well with his young games with Sweden, but he decided to go to Macclesfield of all places. Not a particular choice by a young player to go and just do physical development. He went to Macclesfield and now he's ripped the fuck. And I'm like, it gives him like, he's going to withstand challenges next year, and he's still got the pace and the technical ability on the ball, where we used him as a striker, we use him as a left winger. He's not going to be a first choice starter, we all know that, but at the moment, because of the talent he's got in front of him. But in games where we don't want to use Rashford or we don't want to use Martial, we could potentially use Anthony Alanga, and it would be quite terrifying considering his physical presence. He can withstand the challenge because of his presence. I'm looking forward to seeing him more next season. Besides the usual suspects, he's the one that I've got my personal eye on because I've always rated him, and I'm looking forward to seeing him. So,
yeah, definitely. I think the kids. It's always interesting, especially when you look between since Ollie's came, and obviously Dempsey doing stuff down the academy as well. I think the academy is in the best place it's been in a long time, and I think we'll be reaping the rewards. Hopefully, of a few academy graduates next season. We'd always like to hope that. And before we wrap up, guys, I would like to come to Jimmy. Obviously, we talked about Man United of previous years. I'm going to give you two questions here. So, your favourite and your most heartbreaking moment as a Man United fan. So, whichever one you want to answer first, I'll leave that to yourself. But your favourite, and then your most heartbreaking moment as a United fan.
Recently or of all time?
All time.
Wow, that's a tough one. The heartbreaking one is easy. Aguero, last minute. I think everyone thought United. I think everyone thought United had the league that year. That was tough to take. The other question's tough because I've been so fortunate in 20 years to see so many good moments. Moments that come to mind: Makeda's winner last minute, brilliant. I know Makeda didn't really do anything for United, but that goal was brilliant. United 2 down at Goodison, came back 1-4-2. Chris Eagles scored a goal. They won the league.
Oh, brilliant.
I mean, it's so hard. I've seen so many good moments. You're killing me here picking one. I'm going to pick Paul's goal.
I'll give you. Do you know what I'll do here? I'll give you three. I'm going
to pick Paul Scholes as winner against Barcelona in the semi-final Champions League. Unbelievable. The Arsenal game when we stopped the 49 unbeaten run, when we kicked them off the field. I love that one. And I love the Arsenal fans still give out about that. I love it. I was young for that game. I was very young for that game. Brilliant.
I was eight.
And the third one, I'm getting brain fog here because there's so many. I'm going to go Makeda's last minute goal. That was unbelievable.
Oh, that was epic.
Unbelievable.
Intriguing.
Oh, that's absolutely epic. That goal. I remember watching that. Oh, here's Makeda! Like that comedy, like.
I was only watching the other day actually. And Martin Tyler, Makeda, unreal. Like, it's a pity he never did that after that. I think he scored the weekend after that, didn't he? Against Sunderland.
Villa and Sunderland back to back. Yeah.
So again, we're talking about young players that didn't ever kind of kick on and do it. You could say Makeda's one, but no one will ever take that goal away from him.
No. That's a moment etched in history. Like that's not definitely something you can't take away from. Reese, what I'm going to give you your most favorite, most heartbreaking moment, pal. Hit me.
I'd say number one has to be the Van der Sar penalty save in 2008. Just to remind a certain fan base of we still own more Champions Leagues than you do. Second one, personally, it has to be David Beckham's free kick against Everton. It was his last ever Man United game. It was his last ever Man United goal. He was my Man United hero. It was his final ever game. He walked out a 6-time Premier League champion. And then third memory, positive one, has to be the 8-2 because we absolutely destroyed Arsenal that day. It was beautiful. Do I want to say the 8-2 or do I want to say the Champions League semi-final when we ripped them in their backyard? You know what, I'm gonna go the Champions League one over the 8-2 to be honest, because the counter attack was beautiful and the Ronaldo 40-yard free kick against Almunia. To be honest, a goalkeeper of that should be saving it, but it's the best player in the world and best player of all time. You're not saving that. Worst memory, got two, because it's hard to choose between one. The obvious one is losing the league on goal difference. Obviously, that 2012 disaster made me sick. And the other one is the year before, funnily enough, losing at Wembley to that Barcelona team. That just hurt because we gave them a good game, but the fact that we got beat when we still could have won. I know it's saying like, oh yeah, like you're not going to stop that Barcelona team of 2011, but the teams we played against in that Champions League run as well, en route to the final, and then we got wrote off. I'm like, give us a bit of respect. Like the fact that we didn't have Ronaldo and we still made a Champions League final says it all. So I would have to say the Aguero moment and the 2011 Champions League final are my worst as a Man United fan, without a doubt.
Yeah. Definitely, just for me, obviously, my most heartbreaking is obviously the Aguero. I had the privilege. I had the moment to spend with Liverpool fans when that happened, so you can imagine what my life was like. And one of my friends, Sean, he's a Leeds fan. You probably know him, Jimmy. Booted it down from his house and knocked on my front door after that goal went in, to kind of help. He's reveling in the moment. My favourite moment, my other heartbreaking moment is 2009 days in the Champions League final. When you think about the opening 10 minutes in that game, like we were peppering Barcelona, we're all over them, and we missed a few chances. Then they scored 2 goals, and could have been a lot different for them back-to-back Champions Leagues. And obviously, look, my favourite one on the flip side of that is winning the Champions League 2008. Like it's the Holy Grail for me. I think that stands out for me. And again, I was in the house full of Liverpool fans, and they were laughing at me. And John Terry was walking up to take the penalty, and I was a young child, and I was in tears. So to kind of hear the ball hit the post, that was a bittersweet moment.
My channels went as Terry was running to hit the ball.
I thought it was going in. Like the way it was going, I was like, "There's no way! Like this guy's Mr. Chelsea for a reason. There's no way he's going to miss this penalty." Slipped on his ass, hit the post. I was like, "We've got this."
And the channels came back, and I saw Terry sitting down. Unreal. Oh,
that's unbelievable. I'll give you one other favourite moment. I think it's not a massive moment in our history, but when Van Persie scored the winner at the Etihad, and they were unbeaten there for over I think it was nearly 2 years, and that was a sign. I think for me, that kind of really swayed the title race in our favour that year. I know it was ultimately Fergie's last title. Yeah, I definitely go Van Persie.
I just thought of another one, funny enough, in the same season. A certain fan base aren't going to like this, but who am I to care? Van Persie didn't win a Premier League title with Arsenal, but he got a guard of honour by them when we won the league.
Yeah, we have a few Arsenal fan podcast reads. They're definitely going to be slide into your DMs and probably send you a few F-bombs or whatever. But
they probably will.
We're gonna wrap it up there tonight, guys. First of all, I'd like to thank Jimmy for coming on this evening. Kind of a short notice. I asked him to come on today, but thanks very much, Jimmy. Really appreciate you coming on today. It's been great to kind of get your insight kind of on United and also just on yourself as well. And also thanks very much to Reese for coming on as well this evening as well. And also just let you know, guys, coming up on the podcast tomorrow, our MMA podcast is back on the Weekly Armchair Sports Talk, where I will be talking to Irish MMA fighter John Mitchell, recently who was in camp with Conor McGregor for his upcoming fight with Dustin Poirier this Saturday. So we'll be talking to John about his MMA career, his experiences training with Conor McGregor, and also we'll be talking about the Irish MMA scene as well. So do check that out. That's live tomorrow at 6:00 and it'll be live on YouTube. And so again, thanks very much to everyone for listening to the podcast today. Smash like the video on YouTube. If you watch it on replay, hit that subscribe button, and look, we'll see you tomorrow with our MMA podcast. Thanks very much, lads.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.